You have probably said the word hello thousands of times. You say it when you answer the phone. You say it when someone walks into a room. You say it in texts, emails, voice messages, and conversations with people you barely know. But hello was not always the obvious word to use. In fact, one of the most common greetings in the English language has a surprisingly messy story behind it. Because hello did not begin as a polite greeting. It began more like a shout, a call, a way to get attention. And at one point, there was even a chance that another word could have become the normal way to answer the telephone. The word was ahoy. So why do we say hello? And how did one small word become the sound of beginning a conversation? I'm Earl, the creator of Everyday Sayings and Origins. To keep each episode consistent, I use my digital likeness. Now, back to the story. Today, hello feels automatic. Someone calls and you say hello. Someone walks up and you say hello. It is so normal that most people never stop to ask where it came from, but the word has not always meant what it means now. Before hello became a friendly greeting, English had several words that sounded close to it. Words like hello, hello, and holla. They were often used to call out to someone, get attention, or express surprise. That older feeling is still hiding inside the word. If someone suddenly appears behind you, you might say, hello, but with a different tone, not friendly, more surprised, almost like, wait, what is this? That little shift in tone gives us a clue. Hello was not born as a warm handshake. It was closer to a raised voice across a distance. A way to say, hey, look here, or I am trying to get your attention. That makes sense when you think about life before phones, text messages, and doorbells. People needed short sounds that could travel. A call across a road, a shout across a field, a voice from one room to another. That is the world where words like hello and hello made sense. They were not fancy, they were useful, and useful words have a way of sticking around. But hello did not become the greeting we know today until something changed how people talk to each other. That change was the telephone. Before the telephone, most conversations began face to face. You could see the person, you knew they were there. You could start with their name, a nod, or whatever greeting fit the moment. But the telephone created a new problem. When you picked it up, you could hear someone, but you could not see them. You had to confirm that the connection was working. You had to signal that you were ready. You needed a word that meant, I am here. Can you hear me? That seems obvious now. But at the time, it was new. People were still figuring out how a telephone conversation should begin. And this is where the story gets interesting, because hello was not the only option. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor most closely linked with the telephone, reportedly liked the word ahoy. That may sound odd today, but it made sense at the time. Ahoy was already used as a call of attention, especially around ships and sailors. It was clear. It was loud. It was already a word people used to call out. If history had gone a little differently, we might answer the phone by saying, ahoy. Imagine that for a second. Your phone rings, you pick it up, and instead of saying hello, you say ahoy. It sounds funny now because hello won, but at the time, the choice was not settled. People were still inventing the habits that would become normal. Thomas Edison played an important role in pushing hello forward. Edison saw the telephone not just as a machine, but as something people needed to use smoothly. And hello had an advantage. It was short. It was easy to say. It worked as a call, it worked as a reply, and it sounded natural enough to become a routine. That last part matters. A greeting has to be easy. If a word feels strange every time people use it, it will not last. Hello was simple enough to repeat without effort. So as telephones spread, the word spread with them. People were not only learning how to use a new device, they were learning how to begin a new kind of conversation. The phone rang. Someone answered. And hello became the sound that opened the line. That is why the telephone matters so much in this story. It did not invent the word, but it helped give the word its modern job. Before the telephone, hello was one attention-getting word among several. After the telephone, it became one of the main ways people announced themselves in conversation. That is a big shift for such a small word. A shout became a greeting, a call became a social habit. A practical sound became a polite opening, and once that habit formed, it moved beyond the telephone. People began using hello more widely as a general greeting, not just to check if a wire was working, not just to get attention, but to begin contact with another person. That is one of the most interesting things about language. Technology does not just change tools, it changes manners, it changes what feels normal, it changes the words people reach for without thinking. The telephone gave people a new kind of distance. You could speak to someone who was not in the room. You could hear a voice without seeing a face. That needed a new kind of opening. Hello filled that space. It was not too formal. It was not too emotional. It was not too specific. It could work with a friend, a stranger, a business call, or a family member. That flexibility helped it survive. Some greetings are tied to time. Good morning. Good evening. Some are tied to formality. Greetings. Some are casual. Hey. But hello sits in the middle. It can be polite without being stiff, friendly without being too familiar, simple without feeling rude. That made it incredibly useful, and useful words spread. Over time, hello became one of the first English words many people learned. It is often one of the first words taught in language classes. It appears in songs, movies, phone calls, emails, and casual conversation. It has become so common that we rarely hear it as strange, but its older meaning has not fully disappeared. You can still use hello to show surprise. If someone says something strange, you might say, "Hello, what was that?" If you notice something unexpected, you might say, "Well, hello." If someone is not paying attention, you might say, "Hello, are you listening?" Those uses are closer to the older idea, calling attention, reacting, pointing the mind towards something, so the word still carries both jobs. It greets and it alerts. It opens the door to conversation, but it can also tap someone on the shoulder. That double meaning helps explain why it feels so natural. It does not just mean one thing, it changes with tone. Say it warmly and it welcomes. Say it sharply and it questions. Say it slowly and it can sound curious. Say it with surprise and it becomes almost a reaction. That is a lot of work for one small word, and that may be the real reason hello became so strong. It is not a complicated word. It does not carry a heavy meaning. It gives the speaker room to be polite, room to be friendly, room to be surprised, room to begin. There is also something important about where the word appears in a conversation. Hello usually comes before the real message, before the news, before the question, before the request, before the story. It is a doorway word. It does not say everything. It simply opens the space so something else can happen. That is why losing the word would feel strange. If someone picked up the phone and said nothing, you would wonder if the call connected. If someone walked into a room and stayed silent, the silence would feel awkward. Hello solves that little problem. It tells the other person, "I see you," or "I hear you," or "I am ready to begin." That may sound small, but it is part of how people make contact. Human beings use little signals all the time. A nod, a wave, a smile, a raised eyebrow, a greeting. Hello became one of the most common verbal signals of arrival, and that is why the story is bigger than just one word. The rise of hello shows how language follows human need. When people needed a way to call across distance, words like hello and hello made sense. When people needed a way to answer a telephone, hello found a new purpose. And when that habit became normal, the word became part of everyday life. So, did the telephone create hello? No. The word existed before the telephone, but the telephone helped turn hello into the greeting we know now. That is the important difference. The invention did not create the sound. It gave the sound a stage. It gave people a reason to repeat it, and repeated habits can become culture faster than people realize. There is something almost funny about that. One of the most familiar words in modern life became familiar partly because people needed something to say into a machine. A machine rang. A person answered. A voice needed to prove it was there, and hello became the answer. That is why hello feels ordinary now. It has been repeated so many times that it seems like it must have always been there, but it had to win its place. It had to beat out other options. It had to feel natural enough for people to keep using it. And it did. Not because it was fancy, not because it was poetic, but because it worked. So, why do we say hello? Because an old attention-getting word found the perfect job in a new age of communication. It moved from a shout to a signal to a greeting. And now it is one of the simplest ways we tell another person, "I am here," and the conversation can begin. If you enjoyed discovering the story behind this everyday word, subscribe to Everyday Sayings and Origins. Each episode uncovers the hidden history behind the words, phrases, rhymes, and traditions we use without thinking. I'm Earl. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next origin. Peace.